13 Lectures on the Apocalypse by Brother Robert Roberts. 8th lecture, continuing with Revelation chapter 13. John, standing upon the sand of the sea, chapter 13, verse 1, sees a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns. The 7 heads and 10 horns show the Roman nature of the power represented, and the crowns, being on the horns and not on the heads, shows the time or era. It is the new organization of the Roman world in the West, long after the era of Constantine, when the days of a single imperial rule had passed away, and the 10 kings had made their appearance and acquired their sovereignty in Europe. Upon his heads the name of blasphemy. The papacy is the name of blasphemy, and the heads and the 7 hills upon which it is established. The beast, therefore, has to do with papal times. These had not arrived in the days of Constantine. The popeship was in the germ even then, in the office and pretensions of the Bishop of Rome. Still, it was not a developed institution. It did not become the name of blasphemy enthroned on the 7 hills of Rome till nearly 300 years afterwards. The dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. The dragon, as we have seen, first represented the political paganism of Rome in its opposition to the Christian name in the West. This political paganism was headed up in Licinius, whose seat of government was Byzantium, afterwards called Constantinople. Licinius in the east, Byzantium; Constantine in the west, Rome. Presented at this time the historical counterpart of the dragon and his angels on the one side, and Michael and his angels on the other. When Constantine had overthrown Licinius, he transferred his capital from Rome to Byzantium, which he built anew and named Constantinople. Here he and his successors became what Licinius's government had been before them, the dragon. They did so by reason of occupying the same capital, ruling the same territory, and assuming the same hostility towards the true witnesses of Christ. It was from Constantinople that the persecution of the Church emanated in Constantinian and succeeding times. Constantinople continued to be the throne of the dragon, though professedly Christian in character. A recognition of this is necessary to enable us to understand the statement that the dragon gave to the beast of the sea his power, and his seat and great authority. It was from the emperor reigning in Constantinople in the east that the papacy in the west received its constitution and recognition, or its power and seat and great authority. The history of the uprise of the papacy will show you this. The dragon had the power to bestow, and bestowed it on the Bishop of Rome, after wavering for some time between the Bishop of Rome and the Bishop of Constantinople. It was not an instantaneous or a single act of appointment. The competition between Rome and Constantinople for the headship of Christendom extended over more than a century. It was terminated in favour of Rome by the Emperor Justinian in AD 535, whose decision was finally confirmed and established by his successor, the Emperor Phocas, in AD 606-8. I saw one of his heads as it were wounded unto death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. The 6th head of the Roman beast, that is, the 6th of its 7 historic forms of government, the imperial, received an apparently fatal wound from the sword of the Goths, as we saw in the consideration of the fourth trumpet. The Roman Empire was totally extinguished in the west, the kingdom of the Goths taking its place for a short time, that is, for 70 years. At the end of that time, the forces of the dragon, the armies of the emperor at Constantinople, restored the imperial authority in Italy by defeating and expelling the Gothic forces and putting an end to the Gothic interregnum. Afterwards, on the ground thus cleared, Roman imperialism was restored in the crowning of Charlemagne in Rome as Roman emperor in the west. Thus the sixth head of the Roman beast was healed, to the admiration and astonishment of the world, who rejoiced in the evidently perennial vigour of the ancient imperialism of Rome, reinvigorated from Constantinople. This state of mind is indicated in the statement that all the world wondered after the beast, and they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And there was given unto him, the beast, a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. The power was given to him to continue, the authorized version margin, to make war 42 months. To the Roman beast in its papal constitution was given, by the draconic imperial decree from Constantinople, authority to dictate to the world in spiritual things. The Roman pontiff in his official utterances was this mouth, whose great speakings were blasphemies. Power also to wield the sword in the enforcement of the ecclesiastical ascendancy was accorded by the same settlement of things, by the Constantinople draconic ordinance. The duration of that power was not defined in the draconic decree, but it was fixed in the councils of Providence. The papacy was to possess the power for 42 months, 1,260 days or years. We are living at the end of that period, and can see that the word of God has been fulfilled, exactly 1,260 years from its first institution by the Emperor Justinian in AD 535, viz., at the close of the last century. During the French Revolution, it received a terrible blow, nearly fatal, at the hands of the first Napoleon. But the first institution of papal power was only preliminary, and therefore 1,260 years from that time could not be the full termination. Its confirmation and establishment by Phocas in 606–8 supplied another starting point for the 42 months. Reckoned from this date, we are conveyed to the events of AD 1867, when the French, on their return, rescued the Pope from Garibaldi, took possession of the so-called Holy City, and virtually terminated the Pope's power to make war against his enemies. 3 years later, even the shadow of the temporal power disappeared in the conflict between France and Germany. And at the present moment, that is, in 1880, the Pope is known among his friends as the prisoner of the Vatican. His power is gone. The government of the King of Italy has possession of the city. The Pope is reduced to the position of a mere bishop again. He is obliged to tolerate dissenting chapels before his very eyes, and is powerless to stop the free circulation of the Bible, which has never before been allowed in Rome during the 42 months. This is a great sign that we are near the end of the present order. In verse 11, John beholds another beast come up, not out of the sea but out of the earth. Students of the Apocalypse have found some difficulty with this beast, but Dr. Thomas has cleared it away. That it is another form of the papal beast is proved by the statement in verse 12 that he causeth them that dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. You may ask, why should there be another form of the papal beast? Because in the progress of events, the papal ascendancy took an entirely new phase. The Constantinopolitan dragon of the East, who in the first place gave him his authority, finally became of no account, and from the interior regions of Europe, and therefore from the earth, apocalyptically speaking, as contrasted with the Mediterranean seaboard, there now sprang up a new conquering power, which obtained the controlling ascendancy in Europe and incorporated the papacy in itself in a new order of things. This was the Germanic Empire, springing out of the order of things established by the victories of Charlemagne, King of the French, the Emperor of the Romans. Let anyone read the history of this Germanic Empire, which slowly and peacefully shifted from France to Germany, and finally to Austria, as the leading German power. They will find that it had two horns, or was constituted of two contemporary dynasties, viz. The Emperor and the Pope. These were the two leading features of the empire, to which the rest of Europe were subject. The Pope held his position subject to the confirmation of the Emperor, and the Emperor did not hold a valid position till he received his crown at the hands of the Pope. It was a dual empire, a two-horned beast. They were lamb-like horns, verse 11. That is, by profession they belonged to Christ. Between them they were Christendom. But the beast spake like a dragon for all that. In nature and principles it was thoroughly dragonic, though ostensibly holding a lamb-like character. Let anyone study the deeds of the Pope and Emperor, and they will see the truthfulness of this symbolism. No more merciless tyranny ever afflicted earth than that which, under the name of the Holy Roman Empire, caused the tears and blood of thousands to flow in dire persecution and oppression, under a pretence of authority from Christ. The two-horned beast caused earth and them who dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. The first beast, being Rome in the first stage of her papal constitution, was now incorporate in the two-horned beast. It was merged or fused with it. This is proved by the fact that the latter exercised all the power of the first beast, and proved also by the history and facts of the case. The first beast was revived in the constitution of the second, in so far as imperial rank was restored to Rome, and the Roman Empire reinstated in the West, in the new empire created by the proclamation of Charlemagne as Roman Emperor by the Pope. This was the healing of the wounded sixth head, and by the public proclamation of the new empire of the earth, and the dwellers therein were commanded to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. The great wonders which the new beast was able to perform consisted of the prodigies of war, for which Charlemagne is famous in history. He was able to enforce his will upon all Europe by the powers of destruction which he possessed, symbolized by making fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. By these political miracles he deceived them that dwell on the earth into the conviction that divine authority was on his side, and proposed and carried his proposal into effect, that an image should be made of the killed beast that had recovered. This, of course, is not a literal image. It is part of the symbolism. It means a political likeness or counterpart of the imperial system in Rome that had been killed by the Gothic sword. the restoration, in fact, of the old imperiality of Rome in a new form. This was accomplished on the investiture of the Pope with all the prerogatives of an emperor. In this position, he was the exact likeness of the old Roman emperors of the sixth head, chief magistrate in the domain of civil law, and at the same time chief pontiff of the national religion. He was, to all intents and purposes, an image of the defunct imperialism of the West, but a speaking image. For the new beast which came on the scene with the victorious empire of Charlemagne had power to give life unto the image of the beast. Verse 15. Victorious Charlemagne, accepted and crowned by the Pope, had the power to give political vitality to the papal image of the beast. This power he exercised and ordered the worship of the Pope King on pain of death. Verse 15. Causing all to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of the name. Verse 17. This was the symbolic way of setting forth that, under the new system, the authority of the papal image would be made essential to the holding of any office, or the exercise of any traffic in the emoluments or advantages of church or state. And as this authority was conferred by signing the cross on the forehead or right hand of the recipient of official favour, the cross became the subject of this symbolism as mark of the beast. The name of the beast or number of his name were equivalent symbols of the same thing. Those who know the name of the beast or the number of his name are in the secret as to what is meant by the symbol. It is the number of a man, so says the last verse. That is, when you have found a system represented by the name of the beast, you will find the system is centred in a man. Though the man and the system are two things, the perception of this enigma is made a feat of wisdom in verse 18. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. There has been a great deal of guessing and speculating on this subject. It is a standing joke with a scorning and scoffing class, but it is a matter of wisdom for all that. The difficulty which most people have had in finding it out is due to the fact that their theology prevents them from identifying the beast. They regard the Roman communion as a part of the true Church of Christ, and are therefore driven to look into indefinite futurity for this phenomenon of human history, which is already hoary with age. Those who know the truth are burdened with no such difficulty. They see in the leading figure of Christendom a sovereign who pretends to hold office in all countries as Christ's representative, and to be endowed with supernatural authority and prerogatives, an exact fulfilment of all that was shown to John and also to Paul as to the Antichrist, the man of sin that was coming. The only question is how the apocalyptic identification of 666 can be discovered in him. Does any official title appertaining to him, when the letters of that title are summed up in their numerical value, yield the number in question as the number of his name? It matters not if 20 other names can be made to yield the same number. It must be a name in connection with a one-man system, which has wielded a compulsory authority in all the earth in centuries past. The papal system is such a system, and there is no other system or man of whom this can be affirmed. It is, therefore, a simple question of whether a system, answering in all material points to the prophecy, presents also this feature of identification, that its name, numerically estimated, is equal to 666. The answer is before us in the Greek name Latinos, which in plain English may be said to mean Latindom or Latin power, kingdom or church, headed up in the Pope. The letters of this name added together, according to their arithmetical value, give the number thus: L 30, A 1, T 300, E 5, I 10, N 50, O 70, S 200. And they add up to 666. It would be a grave defect in this evening's lecture if I were to neglect to point out the unmistakable stamp of divine reprobation placed upon the papal system, root and branch, by the language of verse 8. All that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain. As if to give it greater emphasis, verse 7 adds these words: If any man have an ear, let him hear. The multitude admire various features of the Roman system, which commend themselves to human appreciation: its antiquity, its numbers, its learning, its wealth, its political status, its history, etc. They think it the most odious form of uncharity to doubt the salvability of those who belong to its communion. Be it ours to accept the odium consequent on receiving the word of God. This word says, and it strikingly calls our attention to the fact, that those only worship the beast whose names are not written in the Lamb's book of life. Consequently, it is impossible for anyone realizing this to have the least sympathy with the system or its ramifications. The finger of God's condemnation is indelibly placed on it by this chapter, if there were no other. And if it must be considered uncharitable to be on God's side, wise men will suffer the rebuke, awaiting in patience and submission the day spoken of in subsequent chapters, when God will destroy Christendom in preparation for the establishment of his own glorious kingdom in all the earth.